All right. Well, welcome to Heller Barnes Live. And today we have an absolutely killer show. We're excited to have Anna Clements here. And before we bring her on and talk about all the cool things she's done, I just have to say this. Mr. Heller here is one of the most underrated coaches in the narration business any place in the world. And the thing that's funny about it is I sit with them and I get all these insights all the time. But here's the beauty of some of the things he does. He is spending most of his life narrating or talking with other coaches and working side by side with them. So today, when you notice that he says something, you know that he has listened to hundreds of other people both narrate, and he's been with the top coaches in the world. So it's a joy to sit here. And so, Mr. Heller, tell us before we get our guest here, you're doing a pretty cool book these days. Can you tell us a little bit about that cool thing, that project that you have going in the background?
Oh, the Blues Brothers,
That's the one. How's that going?
Danny DeVisa. Yeah, it's first off, thanks for taking away all the thunder from Anna and introducing me, even though I'm here every damn week.
Yeah, but you get to now you get to introduce Anna here as you
Okay,
tell us.
all right.
Tell us about the Blues
Yeah.
Brothers, and then tell us about Anna.
I'll tell you quickly about the Blues Brothers, and we'll go to the topic of our hour here. I don't want to take your time. The Blues Brothers is first off, it's a fantastic book. When I auditioned for it from Dreamscape, and I want you to know I had to audition, and it's the first audition I won, and the last 6 I did. So don't think that we don't have to, Johnny Heller doesn't audition. Johnny Heller does, and he also doesn't get them half the time, more than half the time. 1 out of 6, that's crap. That's like a bad catcher in the major leagues. So I got the gig, and one of the reasons I got it, I think, because I auditioned. I know the people. I know what they went through because I was at Second City. I'm from Chicago. And I told them all that in a little message. And then we talked about doing some marketing. So I did a reading on Clubhouse. I did a video of the thing. And so I'm going to help market it because I don't make any more money from marketing it. I'm going to talk to people about that. I'll talk to Anna about it too. Sometimes it's a good thing that we'll talk about it in this conversation, but it's a really exciting book. I think it comes out in March. It's funny and super well researched. It's a really an excellently well written book. So I'm quite pleased to be a part of it. It's much longer than I anticipated. It's 300 pages or more, so it should be
Cool.
10, 12 hours. But it's wonderful. Having said all that, let's get to the
The star of our show.
star of our show, Miss Anna Clements. Who doesn't
I should
where
have
are you?
brought.
Just outside London, right?
Yeah, I should have brought my own sound effects,
I,
shouldn't I?
You should
I,
we don't
I,
like sound effects. So
so how
I've
did you
known
get
Anna
involved with the
for
Clubhouse stuff? That's what I want to know first
yeah,
before.
let's talk about that. And I just want to tell you, I've known Anna for a long time. Um, I've watched her grow from a audiobook narrator to a coach. We'll talk about the kind of things she coaches and a real leader. When Clubhouse opened, and I don't know when that was, I think she's the first to really um, embrace it, understand it, and make that bitch your own. Right?
And
Isn't
why
that what
did
you
you
said?
what was attractive about it to you, Anna? Because you did it, you were one of these things, you were doing it before it was cool to be on Clubhouse. So what was the attraction for you, and why should we care as narrators?
So to be honest, and thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Um, I was fascinated by Clubhouse. It was, um, well, actually, next Wednesday of next week, I'm celebrating 3 years of weekly rooms and talk about audiobooks. But when I started, 17th of January 2021, it must have been, um, I am aware that I was befriending voiceovers and people doing meditation and people having conversations about the world and about life. And um, I couldn't find any audiobook narrators. I just couldn't. I found all sorts of voiceovers who I'm still friends with, and they were based in LA, so there would be an overnight crowd who I would wake up to. So I'd get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock, I'd turn Clubhouse on, and they'd be chatting about where they'd been, what they'd done, what they were up to. And it was midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning there. And they'd be going to bed as I was having my breakfast, and so we would sit and chat. And it became at a time when the entire world was upside down. I had been divorced for maybe 2, 3 years. I'm living by myself. I'm not allowed to go anywhere. And suddenly it became a lifeline. And that's why I began it. It was really just about having conversations with people. You know, you can only be on the phone so long. And what was nice about Clubhouse was that you could interact if you wanted to, but there's a lot to just listen to. People were playing jazz piano, guys were sitting doing, you know, classical guitar. There were people reading poetry, the Bible, you know, you name the thing you're interested in, it was happening. And so initially my conversations were all about voiceover, but at the time it was still by invitation, and Clubhouse was all very kind of secretive and for Apple only, and felt complicated for people, but it wasn't. And I applied to start a club called Audiobooks because one didn't exist. And you had to literally fill in a form, send off an email, wait for them to let you know if you could have one or not. And it occurred to me to start what we now have, which is basically a cooperative. There are people who run rooms throughout the week who do so independently from me. It's not really anything to do with me. But what's lovely about it is of the 10,000 members, we all get notified when somebody opens a room, when a room begins, if somebody's being interviewed, if something's happening, something starts, everybody gets told. And so it's this lovely feeling of it's just camaraderie, really. And I think, and you ask anybody, it's a lovely space to be, and it's a really safe space. So my room on a Wednesday started as a space to allow people to ask stupid questions. That was my intention, because I was seeing places like on Facebook, and there was nowhere really you could go and not be worried if you had to say, what's the difference between RS and RX? And people
Yeah.
would go, what do you mean? And I'd be like, I can tell you. So I was just desperate to kind of have conversations with people and start those chats.
So one thing that I found interesting about Clubhouse that I didn't understand, so maybe you could fill us in on it. You have a space, and then within it there are, quote, rooms. Can you explain how that works? Because for the new person, they come in and I'm looking at this thing going, I don't get this.
So it's changed a lot over the years, and every so often they announce that there's a Clubhouse update, and we all go, and everybody holds their breath because we never quite know what's going to happen. So when it began, there were clubs, and we were the Audiobooks Club. And then about 6 or 8 months ago, they moved all the clubs to houses. Nobody really knows why or what it means, but ultimately we now belong to the Audiobooks house, and basically the buttons are in different places. It's a very audio friendly app, so there's no texting. You can leave voice messages, you can speak to people literally. And I think that's the point. I think that's what they've tried to create there.
I had a handle on it when you invited me. Well, you told me to get on it, and then they changed it, and I still don't understand it anymore. Although I was on it now, your group, because your group has grown and you've grown. Let's be honest, your notoriety, your presence, everything has grown a lot because of all the work you put into Clubhouse and making this really safe space, and she really has done so. It's charming and it's wonderful. You're charming and wonderful, and that certainly shows in the group you do. My question, I guess, is twofold. One, have you ever talked to the leaders, the people who run Clubhouse? Are they little trolls under a bridge somewhere? Are they Muscovites who are hacking our computers? Who are these people? You know?
So I don't know. They are app developers. There are 13 million people on Clubhouse.
But somebody's got to
It's
be
not a
Mr. Clubhouse, isn't it?
Yes,
Like
no,
Bob
they do
Clubhouse?
exist. And actually there's I've forgotten what they call it now, but there's on a Sunday, there's a Clubhouse meeting, and they come on and they tell you what they've been up to, what they're currently thinking, how the new buttons work, what they
How do
were
they make
intending.
money?
Sorry?
How does Mr. Clubhouse make money?
So that was a query that came up for all of us at the beginning. There was this conversation about were they going to monetize it by requiring people to pay for membership to clubs? Was that the point? Were they going to? There was a time when in the States, I couldn't do it because I live in the UK, but you could attach a link to your profile and people could donate money. So if they enjoyed your room, if they wanted to buy you a cup of coffee style thing, you could actually, there was a way to have your PayPal connected. But I don't really know that it's about monetizing. To be honest, it's become just a space where people go to, I guess, find friends they wouldn't otherwise find. And there
Yeah.
are a lot of independent authors on Clubhouse, all having conversations like the audiobook narrators going, is this a safe space to say, I've written a book, it's 60,000 words, what do I do now? And so it's just a perfect space to be able to go and find people having conversations who are the people that could employ us. while we're having our
what's the name
conversations.
of your Clubhouse room now? What's it currently called?
So on a Wednesday, I run a room called Narrators Assemble.
Okay, and do you run another group as well?
Yeah, I run the Sunday morning Chat and Cuddle, which runs at
Chat and
5
Cuddle?
a.m. Eastern. Yeah, we've had to call it that because we have people who get up at 5 a.m. on the East Coast to join us, and they are so
Oh,
sleepy. And they come every week. So we are gentle in that room. And that one isn't recorded. So that one is literally just a conversation. People bring along what we call their wins and wobbles. So we have conversations about what they're up to, what they've been enjoying, what they're struggling with. It's a
I want
different
to
kind of
handle
room.
Tom's question here, but before I do, I want to ask you, when you started 3 years ago and now, how many people, let's use the Wednesday, because Wednesday's your big group. How many people generally attend, and is there a record number and a record low? I mean, what kind of numbers do you get that attend these
So
Clubhouse
it's
meetings?
not as many as it used to be. It used to be 110, 150 people would be there on a Wednesday. About 6, 8 months ago, when it moved from clubs to houses, people got fed up with not understanding where the buttons were, not
Yeah.
knowing, how it worked. And those who stuck it out, there's probably 80 to 100 people every Wednesday. And then we get replays, maybe 30 to 40 people listening on replays.
That's much like this show does. Yeah.
I think your numbers are probably a little higher,
I
but
don't know. No, I mean, in terms of the replays, I don't know. I don't pay attention to our numbers. Tom has a great question. How does one find Clubhouse? Because I think you have to. It's like it says, like Don Baarns wants to join Clubhouse. Should we let him in? I get those messages all. I used to get those.
So it's not like that anymore. It's just an app that you download on your phone, Android and Apple. It's called Clubhouse. It's very uncomplicated. You create a profile by giving them your phone number, and you can write on your profile whatever you like. A lot of people don't write anything, but it stops me from inviting you into the room if you don't have anything on your profile. So I think it's a good idea. You can attach your Instagram handle and your X handle if you want people to be able to message you outside of the app. Um, and basically you join whichever houses you like, but you have to, some of the houses are open to all. Some of them, like ours, you actually have to go on a wait list, and I go through every couple of days and I add people in just to make sure that they are the right kind of people. Most of them are people who think they want to get into audiobooks.
When I've been a guest on your show, and I think I've been on twice, and it's really lovely. It's so charming. It really is warm and friendly, not like what Don and I do here. Um, uh, uh, um, but when you do it, with the way it looks, for those of you who aren't there, there's a Anna's picture in my picture in Don's, and so we're in the speaker group. We're on top, and you see, let's say the three speakers or the two speakers and the guest, like you see here, our three faces, and then everybody else in the room, you just see whatever picture they choose to select as their picture. And then if somebody wants to join in or ask a question, they can raise their hand, right? That's still there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then they can, and it can unmute them. They can ask a question. It's really, it's just like, it's like a meeting of like-minded people. And it's rather pleasant. And it's certainly your room is very pleasant. I've been on Morris's room, the Sunday, the British,
The Sunday schmooze.
the Sunday schmooze. And so I go there once in a while, and I have if I get a publisher's permission, and we'll talk about that in a second. I've done some chapters. I do some reading, like I did some
Live
Blues Brothers
narration.
live. So I'll just open room. I'll say, and I try to make sure it was easier before, but I try to make sure no one else has an audiobook thing happening. And if they don't, then I'll say I'm going to do a live reading of Blues Brothers, and people just show up. And it's weird because you get like 10 or 15 people maybe, and as you read, because chapters can be 20 minutes, and I don't stop. I generally stop at the end and take questions. But as I go, you can see people leaving. So you feel
Yeah.
like, oh crap, this isn't playing well.
Yeah. What
But
is up?
you see the little icon disappear.
So people can join and leave a room at will, and then it shows to them. Is that correct?
So it's literally a little circle. So it's audio only.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an avatar with your picture on,
Mm-hmm.
and you literally join a room, and you're not on this what they call the stage. I call it the sofa because I think it's a much nicer idea of people coming and sitting on the sofa and chatting with me. They call it the stage, and you can either be on the stage, in which case you can unmute your microphone and speak if you choose to, or you can sit in the audience and you can listen to the conversation that's being had. So it's if Johnny, for example, people have to actually literally raise their hand to be able to be brought up to the stage. Um, And while Johnny narrates, obviously he doesn't want people in there chatting, so they would be in the audience and people just come and go as they please. It's almost like walking through, I imagine it like a studio where there are lots of studios, like the old fashioned when they used to write songs, the
Yeah.
days of Carly Simon. And there's lots of little rooms, people doing stuff, and you can put your head in and see what's going on. And if you don't fancy it, you go next door. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just a lovely kind of, it's
It's
it
given
feels
everything else, it's so simple.
non-judgmental.
It's simplified and lovely, really. It's pleasant. And I will say, and I'm going to lead this into, you're so, she really runs the room. You really do. And you run it, but it's such a pleasant experience. I mean, even if you shush someone up, they're not aware of it. It just your style is so pleasant and so wonderful, which leads me to this. I've known you for some time. Tell me first and tell us how you got into audiobook narration, your background a little bit, and then we'll take you into some of the coaching things you're doing now.
So I've told this story many times on podcasts and stuff, but at 19 I decided that I wanted to be a singer. I had done a lot of harmony with my brother. We played guitar, we did stuff at church. I was in the choir. Nothing professional, but enough for me to know that in that space I knew that I wanted to do that. I felt safe there. I knew I was good at it. And my mother was sitting down one day and I sat with her and I said, I'd taken myself up to the Actors Center and I'd done a day on voice work. And they talked about producing a cassette, for £400. They produce a demo for you. And I didn't have £400. I'm 18,
Yeah.
And but he talked about all the different kind of jobs there were within the industry. And so he went through all the genres of voiceover, but he also talked about being a session singer and the idea of being employed for hours at a time where you would just go in and you would do whatever they wanted you to do, whether that was harmonizing with a particular song or singing a lyric or, a jingle in a commercial. I'm like, oh, that's me. I'm that person. So I go home and I tell my mother and I say, I want to be a singer. I don't want to be famous or be a pop star. I want to sing for a living. I want somebody to employ me to sing for them. And she said, oh, you have to be really good to do that.
Johnny
So
says that to me.
So I went to university and studied economics, and I went into finance, which I was very good at too. And I worked in an office. I got married. I had 2 kids. I kind of watched life go by, and in my late 30s went, hang on, this was supposed to turn out different. And so I started taking singing lessons and I trained classically for 5 years. I studied music. I started doing concerts and charity shows. I got into musical theatre. I started taking acting classes. I lived in the countryside, so the option to take it seriously, for want of a better word, wasn't really there until a professional show came through. And it was one of those shows where they have like the main cast and then they get local people to kind of fill in the crowd. And I was in the crowd until one of the principals went home. Nobody really knows what happened. And they auditioned us and went, we need the mother. The mother needs to be cast and we're opening in 2 weeks. And I auditioned and got the part and they paid me.
What show was this?
It's called Kisses on a Postcard. It was a show that they were running where we were because they were taking it round the country to see if it could go to the West End at the same time as Matilda opened. And it had a huge cast of children. And apparently Cameron McIntosh came down to see it and said he couldn't do both, that children were too much hard work. And then Matilda opened in the West End. So we didn't quite make it. But it was fabulous. And suddenly I went, oh, I can get paid to do this, but I still live in the countryside. So what can I do? And so I bought a microphone and I can keep going. I can keep going this story for quite some time. I bought a microphone
we got like 45 minutes. Go ahead.
Was basically just investigating sound. There's a thing called MOOC, Massive Online Open Courses Online, where you can go on and learn anything at all. And all the universities of the world offer courses, including Berklee College of Music, who offer
What is this called
vocal
again?
production, critical listening, how to produce voice. They taught me what the difference between a WAV file and an MP3.
Say again the name of this outfit. Where you study?
Oh, suddenly I
Muka?
can't hear you, Johnny. It was me. It was me. Why couldn't I hear you?
Oh, you can't hear me now? Can
No,
you
I
hear me?
can now. I can now.
Where did you study online? What's it called?
The Berklee College of Music.
No, Muka, the place
Oh,
that's
MOOC,
online.
massive online open courses. MOOC is
Massive
just the
online open courses.
MOOC is the umbrella term for places like EDX, Coursera, FutureLearn.
I've never heard of any of it.
They're all sorry, I'm really big into self-development and kind of learning and having qualifications. I'm the youngest of 4, and I need certificates that say I'm allowed to be in the room. And so I spend all my time doing courses and taking lessons and doing stuff. And I needed to know what the difference was between a WAV file and an MP3.
Yeah.
I needed to know when they say, can you hear the difference between this silence and this silence? I'd be like, it's just quiet. Don't know what you want from me.
Right.
And so I needed to understand what everybody was talking about. I didn't want to be embarrassed chatting with a sound engineer and going, can you fix this for me? Because I don't know why it's not good. So it kind of, and it just grew organically. I was to tell you the vacuum cleaner story. I was short of a vacuum cleaner, and it had died on me. And I'm doing that Google search where you kind of get involved in far too many things. And at the same time, I'm researching acoustic treatment, and I'm trying to understand what reflections are and what I need for my room and all these sorts of things. And I come across this vacuum cleaner it's called a G-Tech AirAm. And I press play on the advert, and the lady says, silent, powerful, cordless, the G-Tech AirAm. And I'm like, did she say cordless? Now, this is like 2012 when cordless was a big deal as far as I was concerned. And I'm like, I could take the vacuum upstairs and I don't have to unplug it and plug it back in. What is this? But it cost a small fortune, and I'm still researching acoustic stuff. And I come across this guy who says he does, like I'd seen back when I was 18, a demo. You go along for the day, he tells you all about the industry, and you leave with a CD with your name on. And I'm thinking, this is the thing. This is the thing I wanted to do back when. Maybe I should do it, but that was a lot of money too. And I'm like, we need a vacuum cleaner, and I want to do the thing, and I don't know what to do. And I'm scrolling through his website, and it says, if you're thinking twice about coming to see me, here are a couple of hundred students who now work as voice actors. And I'm scrolling, they're just names with like little MP3s next to them of commercials they've done and stuff. And I press on one, and the voice says, silent, powerful, cordless, the G-Tech AirAm.
The vacuum lady.
And my brain exploded, and I went, okay, this is the universe telling me something, but do I buy the vacuum cleaner or do I go see the guy?
So what did you do? We all want to know.
I went to see the guy, and I had a wonderful day. And he basically told me that my voice sat within authoritative reads. I needed to do corporate narration, long form, audiobooks. He set me up for a month for free on Voice 123. He created a profile for me on ACX, and he gave me my little CD demo. And I left, and I went home, and I went, what happens now? Because the demos were uploaded. He'd done that with me, on my ACX profile, and there was like nothing to, and then I get an email from a guy saying, we're looking for somebody to play a British witch. We're a Canadian video game company, and we need you to say these 4 lines. I'm like, okay, I can do that. That's so cool. So I say these 4 lines, and do you know how much money they paid me?
$52.35.
It was a lot more than that, but it was actually the amount of money it cost me to go out and buy myself the G-Tech AirAm.
And this was all in 2022? Do I have that right?
No, 2014 by this time.
Yeah, I'm teasing.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Sorry.
That's right, yeah. Since
So-
then, she's bought many vacuums.
So that was
Indeed,
10 years
indeed.
ago when you started
Yeah.
that. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty
Now, how many
impressive.
audiobooks have you done since you started this career?
Probably about 100. I
Okay.
didn't, the first 2 or 3 years I was in corporate narration, and I thought I was a commercial VO. I thought I wanted to do radio ads, and I don't know. I was excited by the idea. Like everybody, I wanted to be in animation. And so it took me a while to discover who I was, what I had to offer, how it all worked, and audiobooks. I went full time in 2017. So it's been 6 years of audiobooks, which is lovely.
Well, now you've traveled. Now, you've worked with me at the splendiferous New England Yeah, there's no question. You and Sean are an item. So you, Sean, and Joanna and I have worked together in a lot of places. So you've become something of a coach as well. But I want to talk to you about that. I'm going to take some questions from the listeners in just a minute, viewers. But in your coaching, you're not really. What we did, let me see if I can explain this and you can correct how much I screwed up. Most recently in the New England retreat, I did a session with Anna. But my view of Anna and her coaching is she deals with imposter syndrome issues, FOMO. She deals with, I don't know, with spiritual and questions and issues that people have that I generally don't even think about. It's simply not in my frame of reference. So I found it fascinating. I can't remember the name of the title of what we did. It's about FOMO and imposter syndrome, the session you and I did. You know,
Yeah, I believe so. I don't remember what it was called either, actually.
yeah, but
I think,
it
sorry.
was so interesting that people are so open in the way people feel and felt. I'm like, because I rarely have any, I just don't have imposter syndrome. I don't. And I'm not apologizing. I just don't. But a lot of people do. And it's interesting to me to talk about that. And the way Anna talks, and my thing's like, why in the hell would you think that? So, but Anna doesn't handle it quite that way. So it was lovely. And the kind of coaching you do now, it seems to me is how newer narrators, correct me if I'm wrong, deal with all the emotional issues they have to deal with in following through on this craft, on this art, on this dream, as well as more direct and specific things like elevator pitches and demos and things like that. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's grown organically, to be honest, from my journey and the things I needed to learn to be able to stay long enough to make this work. And I'm aware that two things occurred to me. One is that we are all underwhelmed by our own abilities. People tend not to be very good at saying what they're good at. So you'll ask somebody, what are your strengths? And they're like, oh, I just do anything. I do everything. That's a general answer. What genres do you narrate in? I'll narrate anything. Just give me a book. There's nothing I can't read. And actually, that's not the answer the publishers want. That's not the answer casting directors want. And it's not the answer you should be giving. So my other concern, I think through Clubhouse actually, and having people come up and ask the same conversations, the same questions over and over, was that self-doubt affects your voice. That tightness in your chest, that inability to breathe, the hunched shoulders, everything just tightening up on you. And suddenly you're giving your best effort and it's not. And people will often say, I'm much better at home. Or when I'm by myself in the booth, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And you go, well, why is that?
Yes.
And my fascination with that, my entire life is about why is that? Why does this happen and why? And I'm always like picking things apart in an attempt to understand them so I can put them back together. And that's how my coaching started. It was about me having conversations with people and going, you have much more to offer than you realize. And instead of hiding it, if you highlight it, people will want to work with you. So rather than say, there's nothing I can't do, I can read any book you want. If you tell people that you went to clown school and speak fluent Russian, well, when that book comes up, they're going to want you. And when they see you do that amazingly, they're going to offer you another book. So playing to your strengths gets you in the door and gets you the first book that allows people to then trust you with more books, which is all we're all here for.
Very good. That's true.
So you're recommending though, so the answer should be to a publisher very specific and narrowing it down to one or two. What is your strength? Well, I mean, please tell me the way you would say that.
I think so again, when I started doing this sort of 5-6 years ago, people would say, I don't want to be pigeonholed. I have a high-pitched voice, but I don't want to read YA. And people always assume I have to read YA because of the way I speak. And I'd be like, this isn't about pigeonholing. This is about getting people to see you. And again, I think it comes from being the youngest of 4. I am accustomed to not being noticed. And I have spent a lot of time noticing what gets you noticed. And for good and bad. There are things you can do that people go, oh, I noticed you and I never want to work with you again. And we don't want that.
Right.
As
It's
Johnny
weird.
says, if
You and I
you're an
spend
artist,
so much
don't
you and I
open
spend
with
so much
that.
time together hanging out, and we've had great times all the time. I'm also the youngest of 4, and
Yes,
I never knew that about you. I wonder if that's what the connection is, 'cause, we've had wonderful my favorite day is still our day in Austin.
indeed,
That was
indeed.
the that was a great they have those little, you guys have those scooters there. Can I tell the story?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay, we're there, we did a weekend in Austin. It was a great time, even though all they ever eat there is tacos, which is
Yes.
just ridiculous. But, so we have those they have scooters you could rent. You know, people like city bikes and things in towns, they have these scooters, so you just download the app, and then you rent a couple of these little electric scooters, and they're easy to get around. So Sean, we were supposed to spend extra days, but he, of course, had to do retakes because he's just so bad. He has retakes all the time. So he was gonna go home, and I said, no, we put him in the Austin studio, and Ann and I spent the day goofing off on scooters visiting Austin, and we got pretty good at it. So
We
we're
did.
going down this main drag,
Can I tell
and
this part of the story?
yeah, jump in.
So we've spent probably about 2 hours, haven't we, going
Yeah,
from the
easily.
capital to I don't know where. People have told us there are certain places we have to go visit. So Johnny's in charge, I'm following behind, and we're coming down this big drag, as he says, going up towards the capital. And I suddenly realize that I'm in Austin on a scooter with Johnny Heller. Like, oh my God, I should take a photograph of this. And for some reason, my brain decides that it's a good idea while on a scooter to reach into my back pocket and take my phone out. And it's only when I get to this point that I suddenly go, oh, this isn't clever. I'm like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And I take a photograph and I'm like, oh, I got away with it. And then I'm like, if I can do a photograph, I can do video. So I start doing video and we're going still. And I'm saying, I'm in Austin and I'm with Johnny Heller on a scooter, at which point the scooter hits a bump in the road. Well, you can imagine. And actually, it's on my Instagram. I go flying, as does the phone and the camera and the whatever. And yes, I did
The
injure
video is
myself quite
great. It's good.
seriously.
Blacks out. We have to run get her, and she's pretty banged up because you're going a good 20, 30 miles an hour. So we go to there's all these shops up, and it's like Columbus Avenue in New York, but it isn't, or like a fake Rodeo Drive. It's their big thing there. So we go in these stores. We went to some bar across the street, and I said, look, goes, oh, and they had bandages and stuff for it. They said it happens all the time. All the storefronts have stuff for stupid tourists who take videos while they're on a scooter. And then we went bowling.
Yes, and continue to have a lovely day.
Just patch that arm up and off we go.
Now, what I'm impressed by is you are a little self-conscious. Tragedy plus time equals comedy. Obviously, that's how that turns
Yeah.
out.
That
And
was funny then.
yeah, it's now funny, but probably wasn't funny at that moment. But then you still, I see. I don't know if I would have put that up on my Instagram. Okay, of course.
To be honest, so the Instagram is the video of me saying I'm in Austin with Johnny Heller, and then it just looks like I dropped my phone.
Oh,
So
okay.
nobody really knows what happened, and I didn't really talk about it, but there was a lot of blood.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun.
Okay.
But to be honest, I think I was so the people at the shop were really kind. And then
Yes.
Johnny was really kind. And we went to CVS and I bought a big bandage and I just didn't want to ruin the day. And we were supposed to be going bowling and meeting Sean. So we did. You know, it
So-
was.
Could I sum that up? That kind of says sometimes on the journey, something happens that's kind of a little bit negative, and you make the most of it and kept on going. And maybe that might apply to your coaching and other narrators when they have a rough time. Is that at all possible?
It probably, when I'm asked to describe what I do, I often say that there were so many times over the last 10 years that I got stuck, that I thought about giving it up because I didn't know what button to press or how to proceed or what next step to take. And that's what I do. People tend to come to me for, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, and I don't understand what happens next.
Okay.
Or,
Kind of like
I do, most of my sessions are about the elevator pitch because I feel like knowing your strengths and knowing where you're coming from and where you fit within the industry allows you a solid foundation to write the profile on your website, to write the email that says you want to work with me for these reasons. And instead of being cold reach outs where you're going, please give me work,
Right.
please, can I have some more? It's more of it has a sense of power to it, and it allows you to go, this is why I'm good at what I do, and this is why you need me to work with you. And it
Tell us
just
about the
shifts
elevator
that.
pitch, when it's used, and the best kind of elevator pitch. When does an audiobook narrator need an elevator pitch?
All the time, actually. So the thing I work with, we do a sentence, a 200-word and a paragraph. And depending on who's asking, that's what you give them. So if you're in an elevator with, Jessie Bickford, and she's going up to the 32nd floor and she turns and says, what do? You get to say, well, actually, and you give her your elevator pitch, quite literally. But there are times at dinner parties with family and friends where having an answer to the question, what do you do for a living? Or what are you up to? Actually allows you to understand how interested that person actually is in the answer. So I'll often give my one sentence answer, and people sometimes say, is that a thing?
What
And
is
then
your
I
one
know not
sentence
to
answer? Can
continue
you
that
give it?
conversation.
What is your
Sorry?
one sentence answer? What do you do?
I'm an audiobook narrator.
That's it?
That's the simple one.
That's a quick elevator ride.
It is. And that's the one I use when I know that people are asking because they're being polite.
Right.
So
Right.
suddenly it becomes a
Yeah.
study in human psychology. It's a social experiment. I feel like acting and audiobook narration is a social experiment. It's about seeing how people react to stuff, understanding why people are the way they are, knowing what makes people react in certain situations differently. The arguments that authors write for us, they play out in particular ways because people are the way they are. And that allows you to know how to play that character, what that person's going to sound like. All of that stuff comes with experiencing people.
Yeah. So
Would
if
you
I ask
be?
you how you doing today, and I really don't care, I'm being socially polite.
I'm
I re-
fine.
yeah, I really don't. Yes, I don't want to hear your. Well, I had to have my car towed in today, and
Exactly.
the dog went out. Yeah, all that stuff. Nobody really cares sometimes,
No.
and then you're
Yes.
figuring out. So if I do a follow up, oh, audiobook narration, that sounds interesting. What's that like? And then you have your
I do.
paragraph.
Yeah. And basically, it's about mine personally is about the fact that I'm Spanish, and so I'm bilingual and I talk far too much. It seemed like the perfect choice. And then if it really depends on the situation. So if it's a dinner party where it's not audiobook people, you tend to find that you have to kind of explain what audiobook narration is, as opposed to meeting a director from an audiobook production house or another narrator. Those again are two separate things. So if you meet another narrator, you might tell them that what genres you narrate, or the kind of stuff you put in your profile. Whether you do accents, whether you have an acting background. Casting directors sometimes want to know more about you as a person. So
I,
the fact that I speak Spanish and juggle is something that makes people stop for a second and go, sorry, did you say juggle?
yeah.
And
How do you
everybody
say?
has one of those.
¿Cómo se dice juggle?
Malabarismo.
Say it again.
Malabarismo.
Malabarismo.
Yeah.
I tell you, I'm doing Duolingo Spanish.
Yeah, I'm sure juggle hasn't come up yet.
No, it's never come up. ¿Cómo se dice has not even come up yet. When let me ask you, I was going to go somewhere, and then I interrupted myself with a stupid juggling comment. I want anybody in the listen, if anybody has any questions for Anna, please post them so we can handle it. This is called Ask Us Anything. No one's asking us anything.
This is a huge hello to all the people in the chat. I'm unaware. Sorry, I've got you minimized so that you're at the top of my screen, so I can't actually see
okay.
the.
I'm monitoring
only
that.
Don
But
can really see it.
I've had a couple people send me some messages that weren't able to be on today, and one of them was because Johnny and I have had a couple guests on who publishers who've implied a lot of people are going into studios to record, and they were like, wow, I can't do that because I don't live in New York, I don't live in LA. Anna doesn't live in either of those either. And so is there really a market for all the people working out of their home? How often
Yes.
do you go into a studio? And what do you
Probably twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. And usually because the the rates in England are poor by comparison to the US. So I tend to go in for the excitement. You know, going down to London and narrating for 4 days at Penguin Random House is super exciting. And I get to make a load of social media posts about it, and but the pay is not as good as it is when I stay here at home in my pajamas. So, you know, it makes sense to, again, work out, depending on what genres you narrate, which producers are wanting those books narrated, and then how they work.
Okay, and I know just a minor changes. So Johnny, people think you go into a studio all the time because you're in New York. How's your ratio as far as
Oh, the vast majority is in this lovely space here.
okay?
Almost all of it. Sometimes I'm given the option.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go next week to John Marshall Media down in the Times Square area to work on a book. And then the next, when is it? March, I think, after the Audis and stuff are over, I'll be going to Macmillan to do a book. And they gave me an option. Do you want to come here or go or do it in your house? And when I get that option, assuming that all things being equal, one is, you know, I can walk the dogs and leave, and then Joanna can handle them for the day. I don't have any. One of the problems when you're working at home is your home, and home stuff can be there because, you know, even though you're working, people know that you're home,
Right.
and that's so. If you go to the studio, also you tend to get it done. You know, at home I can do a book. I can do Blues Brothers in 10 days or 2 weeks, however long they give me. I can do a chapter a day if I want. If I'm in their studio,
Right.
I'm going to work, you know, 10 to 4, whatever it is. Also, if you have the chance to go to studios, you meet all the other publishers and producers sometimes. You can put a name with a face and they can know you, and you can meet people, and
Right.
that can increase your marketability. And for those of you who aren't in New York or LA, I know that certain studios will. They're not going to fly you across the country, but I think I think Brilliance will send you to Grand Rapids sometimes. It's not out of the question all the time. And if you have a chance to leave your studio to work somewhere, that's great. But there's nothing absolutely. The reason we work so much is because our studios, all three of us are in studios that are as good as the studios, if not better than those at the publishers' houses. They know that when Anna does a book in her studio, it's not there. Whatever issues there may be, won't be because of the studio sound.
So
You know, and that's what they care about.
so Colette has asked a good question here. So as a narrator from home, if I need to be directed, do I have to have something like Source Connect? Now, how often? So let's ask the bigger question from both of you. How often are you when you're working from home? What percentage is self-directed, and what percentage has a actual director?
Anna, go
So
first.
again, last year I probably did two from Los Angeles. I did a book with Dayan Audio and a book with Mosaic Audio, both of which had an engineer on the line recording me through Clean Feed. I have Source Connect because I do commercial work too, and I think I'm big on people understanding tech and not being afraid of it. So I think if it's an option for you, um, yes is the answer. You know, don't go out paying for anything, but understanding it and knowing what it is and researching it, we've all got time to do that.
But here's the question: how many times have you had a director when you're working from home?
Twice. So I
Twice.
last year I went twice into studio in London, and twice I was directed of all the other, and I did 18 books last year. So
Okay.
14 of them were
Okay.
self-directed and self
Cool. Johnny.
everything.
To answer the question specifically, Source Connect is generally used for commercial stuff. And they're very nice people. They'll talk to you, they'll work you through it. They're really sweet. I subscribed for a while, then I realized I wasn't really booking enough. I didn't need it. If you get booked to what's the day? Monday, Tuesday. If you get booked Thursday, you can contact them Wednesday. They'll set you up and you'll be ready, and you can just do it as you need it. But Anna's right. You should have an understanding of how it works. In terms of directing an audiobook, they can do it by Zoom, Skype, phone, FaceTime. You don't need a special Source Connect or special techie thing. And it rarely will you be, almost all of your stuff is self-directed. So two options. One, get good at that, or B, hire a performance coach to
Right.
work with you for your first hour or so. If not, if you can't afford the whole book. If you work for certain companies like Penguin Random House, they will assign a director. You will be directed. And you can still be home though. They're not going to go to your house. They're going to go like this.
Right.
And it's not even you don't even see them. So, but it's rare that they will give you a director. When I go to Macmillan in March, I have to count through all the months to get to like the alphabet. January, February, March. When I go there in March, there won't be a director. There'll be an engineer, but I doubt there'll be a director.
Right. So you're self-directing 90% of or 95% of what you do in a given year.
Easily, yeah.
Okay. And Anna's would be similar for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And also, just for the audience, if you're not, a lot of times today, you can have a Zoom call where they hear what you're doing and you're recording it on your end and you are sending it to them at the end of the day. That is also a very, very, very popular option, as opposed to them trying to record in real time over Source Connect or Clean Feed or some of the other systems that do that. The changes come where today they want to hear you potentially in those few cases, but you can record on your own system, assuming you have that kind of setup that does it well, and then send it into them. And that's really where the whole business is going. They want to hear you. They may want to direct you. They don't want to record you if they don't have to, because it's a lot more complicated for them.
And more often than not, certainly Penguin Random House, when there's a director, they have you do the open, we all used to punch record,
Mhm.
They have you do open record, which is you don't stop. And I always stop because I'm just, I'm Pavlovian. I just can't not do it. But they want to let it keep going and they'll cut it up the way they want to cut it up.
Right.
But I always screw that up.
Yeah. And and there are some of those, but most of them want, at the end of the day, they just want something that their editors don't have to. If you're a Johnny Heller, if you're an Anna, there are going to be cases where they'll take anything. You guys could throw something in on a cassette tape and they still would say, oh, I want these two. But for most of us, it does require that we send them something that's well done, and they want it punch recorded simply because they don't want the additional editing time. Unless you're a brand name already, most of us, they want something that's already pre-done where they're not just a straight read. But by the way, the reason the engineers do that when they're doing the remote stuff, it's just easier for them because then they get one feed, it all comes in at once. So if they can get something that's already done, they love it. But anyway,
I'm going to mute for 1 second so I can cough.
Okay, go ahead and do that. Anna,
I'm
any
aware
comments
that
on that?
Yeah, I'm aware that Colette's got lots of questions still about the upload and download speeds. And I do, again, most of my work that's online is with corporate people, and they can't afford to have an engineer in a studio. So I'll often be speaking to the creative director of the place where they've made the video, and they just want to add the voice. And sometimes I'll speak to them on the phone. I'll be recording in my booth and they'll be on the telephone because of the way they've got it set up. They haven't got the capacity to be on Zoom or to be doing whatever. So people make it work however best works for them. More often than not, they're just listening. They're
Right.
not after hearing the quality there and then on the telephone. They're just looking to help you with medical pronunciations or, and again, with the engineers, often they're just live proofing. They're listening while you're doing the punch and roll work, and they're going, you said telegraph pole and it says telegraph post or whatever. But it doesn't happen as often as people think. I think the majority of work is with independent authors from your own home on your own time, doing your own thing. And I think that's why, so one of the sessions I teach is about scheduling and accountability, because as Johnny mentioned, when you're at home, there is this tendency to, my days used to not start until the dishwasher was empty, the washing machine was done, the beds were made, and suddenly I've got the cleanest home in the world and it's already lunchtime and I haven't started. And I found that really difficult. The transition for me from office work to freelance work really I had to kind of pay attention, and and also when I realized then that I was doing too many other things, I started going the other way, and I would work all day, every day. And suddenly I didn't have an evening because I lived on my own. I just had to stop for food if I remembered. And that's bad too. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Does some of it for you involve like zones of your house, that this is a working area, and then when if I'm in my living room, I don't work, or?
Yes.
Yes.
So I have a desk and in this office space, I have a desk and with my laptop and a booth with my computer. Everything happens in here. When I leave this room, I'm not at work anymore.
Okay.
Because otherwise it just spreads.
Right. Johnny, how about you?
No, not at all. I have this room because Joanna and I both work. So we both work in this booth. Joanna we have a beautiful old roll top desk that Joanna's absconded with. So I have a little TV stand tray in front of the sofa with so I do a lot of reading there. But work, if we include prep, reading the book, I don't need to be in. I don't want to be in here to read it.
Right.
I'm having a little fan. You can hear a little buzzing going on. It's hot in here. I don't want to be in here. So I read out there. I prep out there. Then I come in here and do the work, auditions, the work. And we have to schedule because, Joanna has books and I have books. So we have to schedule our time together. But the recording happens here. But we only live, Anna probably lives in a palatial estate in Manchester or something. I live in a New York 2-room apartment. So it's a little different. So you can't delineate a space for only one thing.
Yeah.
Everything's for everything.
Okay. And I cheated. I've been here 20 years, but I've been self-employed for 40, and I have 5 kids. And one of the criteria when we bought this house, there was going to be a separate building on the lot where I could have my office space, and it's turned into, we have two studios and we have extra space, but it's in a separate thing. So I walk to work 25 feet. But so I'm just saying, everybody has to find their own way. I did, by the way, though, the first 20 years I was self-employed, there was a 1-bedroom that I stole from my office. And every time the phone would ring back in those days, my wife would yell to all the kids, "Quiet, Dad's got a call." And they would all shut up for a minute, because in those days, if you had a home office, you were assumed to be not a very serious business person. And then it's come into fashion over the last 10 years, but in the old days. So I'll bet Anna's really, really good about separating her life. This is
I
business.
wasn't.
You
It's
weren't?
a new thing. No, and I take a walk. Because I
Ah.
work from home, I come down in my pajamas and I'm already here. So I go round the block
Mhm.
in the morning, and
Yep.
I'm supposed to do it again at 5 o'clock, but
Yeah.
That's why
it's dark
that's
and I'm
why I go to the park
tired.
all the time.
Yeah.
I try to go to Central Park almost every day if I can for a nice
It's
hour
important.
stroll. And
Yeah.
it clear you need if you're working at home
Right.
in your studio, one of the things people say, and I see it on Facebook, Anna, you've seen it too. People say, I did 7 hours in my booth today. That's a meaningless stat.
Right.
That's like I had 18 at bats. Well, how many hits?
Right.
I mean, what happened here? 7 hours. If you only did 15 minutes to work, that's not a really good ratio.
Right.
And also, I think in every hour, and I don't know if Anna, if you're like, every hour I'm in the booth, I need to get up. I need 10 minutes of that hour. I've got to get out,
Yeah.
walk around, see what the world is like, look out the window. And then after a few hours, and I have to go for a walk to clear my head and come back in. Are you like that?
I'm an hour and a half, so I actually only do 3 hours a day. Scratching the back
Ah.
of my neck because I'm feeling guilty about that. But I do 9 to 12 in the morning is my recording time, and then 2 to 6 in the afternoon is admin, social media, researching stuff, sending off the auditions that I've recorded in the morning, whatever it is. So I
That's
do an
really
hour and a half
organized.
to have a cup of tea, an hour and a half, and then
Yeah.
and the idea is that I needed the regularity of a Monday through Friday
Right.
of knowing that I was getting out an hour a day.
Yep.
So that a 10-hour book takes me 2 weeks or whatever. I had real trouble at the beginning with scheduling. I didn't understand. People would send me auditions and then say, "When can you do this book?" I'm like, I don't know, maybe when I finish this one. I didn't understand how it worked, how you were supposed to know what dates can I give you, what does it mean?
Yeah.
So it's been a journey.
If you come from the corporate background as you do, I can certainly see the need to be so compartmentalized and set up. For me, I just write in what I do keep a calendar, and I write down today I'll write down, record Blues Brothers, and I'll usually write down 10 to 4, but I won't really do 10 to 4 because other things come up. Like today, it's written down here, even though I know I'm here at 1 o'clock. I know that Joanna has a session booked later today, so I won't be able to. But I write it down so I know I'm going to be in there at least get some work done. And I have to write it down, or I tend to, when you're in charge of your schedule, if you don't schedule, you're no longer in charge.
Right.
I really think, well, let's go write that down somewhere. That was very clever.
A turning point for me was I used to work to deadlines, and I thought that was a good thing. If Friday the 17th is the date, so you reverse engineer it, you work it backwards, you're doing an hour a day, you work it back, 14 days. And it seemed to make sense to me. What I didn't realize was that what I wasn't doing was there's a difference between deadlines and scheduling. And learning to schedule for me was it changed everything, made it all much better.
I do think that a lot of the people that get into narration don't realize that they're running a small business, that they are self-managing, that they have to schedule. Whatever system I use may not work for you. That's fine. You don't have to have my system, but you better have a system.
Yes.
And all the coaches I've ever worked with, over time. And so I'm the same as you two. I walk my dog every day, every morning before I do any business. We go out and we walk. I have some other things. And I used to do this crazy thing. I used to keep snacks in a drawer in my desk, and I would always have things to drink at my desk. Lately, I've stopped having the things to drink, or I have a very small amount. Let me see if it's of tea. This is tea with lemon in it, and I have a very small amount, and I will do it because there's no way I'm getting up in the middle of this hour to go grab something to drink. But I've stopped keeping at my desk while I'm working, different if I'm narrating, a glass of water, because I realize, get up off my chair and go grab a glass of water and come back, and just that couple minutes of being someplace else is a real win for my productivity. And
Yes.
what Johnny just said is, who cares if I sit here 7 hours a day? It's really, what do I get done in that 7 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour? And getting up more often as I mature has been a big win. I don't keep snacks at my desk anymore. I don't keep it's like, get up, go get something to drink, come back with nothing. But that forces me to get up more often than I used to.
My issue used to be that I was very easily distracted. And so when I got a book with 82 chapters that were 15 minutes each,
Ah,
I would see, chapter 7. I'd be like, oh, I've just finished a chapter. I can go take a break now. And so those books would take me forever. And it took me a really long time to realize that if I sat for an hour and a half and recorded whatever I need, to keep going past a chapter heading,
right.
that was about 3 or 4 years in before I realized that for me was a kind of an Achilles heel. And so having to, again, it's about getting to know yourself and understanding how you work and what you need and what your family needs. I talk to a lot of people who have kids that they have to drop off at, 9:30, and at 2:30 they're picking them up again. Well, suddenly their day is 10 till 2.
Right.
And that's all the time they have. And they have to have lunch. So
Yeah.
suddenly you're committing to 3 hours a day of dedicated work. And so knowing what best work to do during that time, analyzing those things is important to look at. I'm reading this question from Tom Barkley that says, how do you avoid inserting up the Mancunian accent into your work? Tom, I'm very curious about your query, since I'm actually Spanish and I was born and brought up in London and I live near Bath. I don't think I've
Where's
even been to
Mancunia?
Manchester. So I'm curious about where that question's come
But
from.
I think the question is, how do you avoid taking one of your voices and keeping them all separate in your head while you're doing all this type of stuff?
She's
Because they're not required. It's the same. How am I not speaking in Spanish to you
Yeah,
by
no.
mistake?
Wait, you said you're Spanish. You're not speaking Spanish. You're a liar.
Podría hablar en español si quisieran, pero mejor hablemos en inglés.
I do
See,
think
that's how she does it.
I do think people that do this all the time end up being able to maintain. So this is why I don't do narration. I couldn't maintain so if someone says say something with a certain accent, I can say a sentence that way because I can imitate Johnny Heller. And then if they came back and asked me to do a retake a week later, I'd never be close to whatever I happen to come up with that day. People that do this regularly get very practiced at maintaining an accent for an extended period of time, and it becomes something that you must practice if you're going to do multiples. It's a practice thing, man.
And
It's
the
crazy.
consistency is really important. When I began, I didn't understand that my voice was totally different just after breakfast, just
Ah,
before lunch,
Oh,
just
yeah.
after lunch, in the evening, at 2 a.m. when I've still got a chapter to go and I'm against a deadline. That shift in your consciousness of your own voice
right.
is, again, it's a bit like learning about noise floors and understanding acoustics. It takes time and practice, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And
Let me
Lisa
let me
will.
leave
Oh,
a quick suggestion for folks about that. When you're done recording at the end of whatever your recording day is, when you start the next day, whatever time you start, listen to the last few minutes of what you did, because even if you have a morning voice, an afternoon voice, or an evening voice, whatever voice you just did, you can find it. You can imitate yourself, and then eventually gradually go into the voice if you finish with an evening voice and you got a morning voice now, you can start this way and move into the morning voice gradually, so it doesn't accost the readers and think, who's doing the book now?
Right.
You
Well,
don't want them.
so Lisa will have something where she'll instantly listen to a retake, or she needs to do a redo, and she says, "Oh, cripe, that was my morning voice." She'll pick it
Yeah.
up instantly, and then if she has to do it because she's under a deadline, like, "Oh, this has to go out today," she'll treat it as a character voice and say, "Oh, I'm doing my morning voice," and she can get into that voice in the evening. But if she can get away with it, she says, "Ah, that was my morning voice. I'm going to wait till tomorrow morning and do it unless there's a deadline that absolutely forces me to go use the other voice." Because it's just easier to do your morning voice in the morning and do the
There's
evening voice in the
a
evening.
real change to the energy throughout the
Yes.
day, and I
Yeah.
don't think we're aware. And you can make it happen. Sitting up straight and raising your hands above your head. I went to an APAC in 2017, and somebody did a warm up, and they said, "When was the last time you raised your hands above your head?" I was like, and so I sit in the booth now every so often. I go, "Oh."
As we near the end of our hour here, let's bring up a couple things. Anna, when can we find you on Clubhouse again?
Every Wednesday and every Sunday morning, but Wednesdays is my big day. This week, what are we doing tomorrow? We're speaking to some ladies who have a company that employ virtual assistants. So if you want to outsource your reach outs or your website updating, or I don't actually know, that's why we're talking to them. So we're chatting with them tomorrow. But yeah, every
That's 1
Wednesday,
o'clock
1
Eastern
p.m.
time?
Eastern.
Okay, and then what else is coming? I know you're going to be. Are you coming to the Audies out in LA?
No, I'm at the London Book Fair in March, and I'm going to Santa Fe at the end of March. So I'm in Albuquerque with Sean and Steve. And then we're on the Audiobook Adventure Cruise, which is very
Audiobooks at sea,
exciting.
right? Yeah.
Audiobooks at Sea, yeah, beginning of April. So
Okay.
really looking forward to that.
And Don, can you put up the website or the email to people who want to reach out to Anna?
Yeah,
I can
please do.
I will.
I
What I
must
actually
just
will do,
mention, sorry.
in the show notes, so people, there's a description down below on all the YouTube things. I will have Anna's website listed there so that you can get this now or 2 years from now when you see it and be able to get a hold of her. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
I have an international piece of news that's not coming out till tomorrow, and you heard it here first. There
Okay.
is a new podcast available called Audiobooks with Anna. And there's an episode with Johnny Heller, is our first episode. It's up currently on Spotify and Apple. And it's basically the interviews that we did last year on Clubhouse are being released as podcasts because a lot of people said they wanted to hear the information but couldn't get their heads around the app. So a
Oh,
podcast is in the making, and all
I
the
was thinking, I
episodes
don't remember doing a podcast with you.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And I have an announcement because every Tuesday now I'm doing VO Tech Simplified live on Facebook, and I'm doing it the same day as we do these. So now I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a nap. I'm not really. At 5 p.m. Pacific, there is another show that is just me, and I'll have some other guests on that. But we're just talking about everything related to voiceover and narration tech. So that's hardware, software, all the things you need, microphones, interfaces, and just it comes up that people need to know more. Anna was talking about don't be afraid of the tech. Well, this is all an attempt to have people have a place where they can get more information and talk about it interactively. So now every Tuesday, I did one last week was the opening one. Today I'm doing another one, and it'll happen every week, every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. So check out, it's on the same channel that you're on right now. So if you go look, you'll see that one as well.
And
All
I'll do
right.
my quick last promo. Scott Brick and I'll do the Heller Brick or Brick Heller audiobook, Business of Audiobooks out in LA. It'll be March, whatever that Sunday is, March 3rd, I think it is. We'll have the Scott and Suzanne Freeman are looking at spaces right now, so we should have it. Hopefully, the next couple of days we'll have one picked, and then we'll have it. You can go to Scott Brick, brickbybrick.com to register for that, and that'll come up pretty soon. And then right now I'm looking January, February, March, May. I'm looking at May to go to New Orleans for a workcation, a splendiferous workshop in New Orleans. It's going to be a work vacation, so couples and families will bring families. Although I don't really enjoy kids, but bring them if you must. But we're going to be New Orleans. I'm trying to set up that, waiting to hear from hotels, And there you have it. So we look forward to seeing you here next week. Tell your friends, tell everybody. And Anna, you always a joy. Thanks so much for joining us. Folks, do yourself a favor. Talk to Anna. She's just a joy to be with. Visit Clubhouse, find out more about her. And there you have it.
Yep. Check out all the links in the show notes so that we'll have links to Anna. And of course, too many people don't realize how good Heller is at coaching as well. So you have a fantastic week. We look forward to seeing you next week. And as always, we'll see you on the wires. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Behold our soap opera smiles.